it out. Nothing changes. My fault. It's all my fault. I can't move on. I can't.
Just a few months ago, we delved deep into the first installment of a series that attempted to reverse the trend of many long-standing horror franchises, taking a jarring turn towards the action genre. The Evil Within made a valiant effort to return the genre to its roots, and although it may have slipped into some of the more action-heavy standards of its time, the game had garnered enough praise and attention to warrant a continuation of its story. Now, a large contributing factor to the first game's success was its director, Shinji Mikami, who had created and worked on some of the most important and influential horror games of the late 90s to early 2000s. Mikami's desire to pull the horror genre back on track is what inspired him to create The Evil Within, and what made that first game such a unique experience, especially when compared to other quote-unquote horror games releasing at the time. That doesn't mean that the first game didn't have its fair share of issues. By the time the credits rolled, questions and details regarding the game's narrative and characters had remained unanswered or unexplored, leaving room for a sequel to improve upon these shortcomings. It would take a few years before the sequel would be released, and in that time, Shinji Mikami would announce that he would be taking a backseat on development towards the sequel, giving room for a new director to take his place. While this news was sure to unsettle some fans of the first title, Mikami reassured that the sequel was in good hands, and on October 13, 2017, almost exactly 3 years after the release of the first Evil Within, The Evil Within 2 would hit store shelves. Once again, players would be able to assume the role of Sebastian Castellanos in the aftermath of the Beacon incident, in hopes to unravel the mysteries that lingered for 3 years between releases. So tonight, I'd like you all to join me as we guide Detective Castellanos through another perilous journey inside the STEM and discover if the unresolved questions left over from the events of Beacon Mental Hospital will finally be answered with The Evil Within 2. A quick disclaimer before we get into the story: this game is, of course, a direct continuation of The Evil Within, so if you haven't played the first game for yourself, or at least haven't seen my video on The Evil Within 1, I recommend you do so if you care about spoilers. With that out of the way, our story begins in the familiar office of Detective Sebastian Castellanos, the main protagonist of the first Evil Within. His office serves as the main menu of the game, but it also doubles as a bit of foreshadowing for what's to come in this brand new story. First, we see a framed photo of who we can assume to be Sebastian. Maybe. Is that supposed to be Sebastian? What the fuck happened to him between these two games? Holy shit. He's horse-faced. Alongside him is his wife, Myra, and his daughter, Lily. In the first game, we never got to see much of Myra until the last few seconds of the Kidman DLC. Now Lily, on the other hand, we never saw her at all. Lily was only mentioned through notes in Sebastian's journals, and a singular newspaper clipping that revealed she had died in a house fire. Actually, that exact article is front and center on Sebastian's desk, and as we finish up on the main menu, a lit cigarette falls into the paper and sets it ablaze. This transitions us into what seems to be a flashback, as Sebastian arrives home during the house fire that killed his daughter. He breaks his way into the house and rushes up the stairs to his daughter's bedroom as she cries for help. When we finally make our way through the flames and into her room, we find it completely untouched. I guess he was being a little dramatic, I don't know. Sebastian walks further into the room, Lily is nowhere to be seen, until she appears out of thin air behind him. Lily starts blaming Sebastian for not being there to save her, and when Sebastian bends down to embrace her, she bursts into flames and engulfs the two inside a vortex of fire. Of course, this ends up being a nightmare. Sebastian wakes up inside a dingy bar after having passed out. In the first game, we learned from our favorite snitch Joseph, Sebastian's partner in the police force, that Sebastian had picked up a drinking problem after the death of his daughter. Here, we see that on full display. It's been 3 years since the incident at Beacon, and Sebastian has only gotten worse. We'll learn that Sebastian quit his job at the KCPD and spends much of his time drinking his sorrows away. But before we get into that, we find an old friend sitting across the table from us.
Kidman?
Hello, Sebastian. It's been a long time.
3 years. I've been trying to track you down for 3 years.
And you thought you'd find me at the bottom of an empty bottle. Is that it?
Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. I don't know who these people are, but this is not fucking Sebastian or Kidman.
Good.
Yeah, so Sebastian and Kidman's voice actors were recast for this game, and I believe their models were also changed, though that might just be because of the technical upgrades between releases. Anyway, I was not a fan of this new cast. Their performances often came off kind of cheesy to me, almost like an anime dub, and you'll see what I mean as we get further into the game. Now, to be fair, my dislike for this new cast might just be because I spend so much time creating these videos and listening to or looking at these characters that their original performances get burned into my brain. I will say, they didn't waste any time trying to find someone that sounded similar to the original actors, but what can you do? Anyway, we learned that Sebastian had spent these past 3 years trying to track down Kidman and get answers about her involvement with Mobius, but was unsuccessful in finding her. Kidman tells him that he couldn't find her because Mobius didn't want him to, and signals Sebastian to glance at 2 Mobius members that had accompanied her to the bar. Now, this came as a shock to me. It's made obvious here that Kidman is, in some way, still affiliated with Mobius, despite her entire campaign revolving around her discovering just how evil the corporation is and ultimately revolting against them. We know that Mobius is a powerful entity, so maybe it's possible that they're blackmailing Kidman somehow to keep her in line or something of the sort. I guess we'll have to see where this leads. Kidman then slides a slightly burned photo across the table to Sebastian, that photo being the same one we saw in his office. This drives Sebastian to the edge, pulling his revolver on Kidman and demanding answers from her. But her only response is that Lily is still alive. And we're given the premise pretty early on here. No surprises like the first game. Sebastian is tasked with saving his daughter, who for years was assumed to be dead, from Mobius. Clearly, Sebastian doesn't take this news well, and even while blackout drunk, proves himself to be quite the badass, taking down both of the Mobius agents before Kidman injects him with a sedative and kidnaps him. When Sebastian wakes up, he finds himself strapped to a wheelchair and being pushed down the hall of the Mobius headquarters, eventually landing back in the room where this all started, a laboratory containing a new and improved STEM. Since the failure of the STEM system at Beacon, Mobius has been busy for the past few years crafting a more stable version of the machine created by Ruben Victoriano. Now, largely out of the testing phase, Mobius has a new goal for the STEM: to connect millions of people to the machine in order to create a hive mind, controlling each and every individual's thoughts and emotions with one central being at its core. Of course, they try to put a benevolent spin on this, reasoning that they could create world peace and happiness and expand our species' capabilities, but knowing Mobius, this is most likely bullshit. Surely, they have some nefarious intentions behind this machine. Now, all of this is explained to Sebastian by someone I didn't think we'd be seeing again: the Administrator, the main antagonist of Kidman's DLCs, the very same Administrator that I thought Kidman had killed by the end of her story. It turns out that wasn't true, and not only did Kidman not kill the Administrator, but he doesn't even seem to be aware of Kidman's previous disobedience to Mobius. This would imply that the entire time Kidman was being ordered and hunted by the Administrator in her story, it was nothing more than the effects of STEM playing tricks on her mind. This does give a bit more nuance to Kidman's situation in the present day, her choice to stay with Mobius. If the Administrator doesn't know about her defiance against Mobius, there likely isn't anyone inside the corporation that does. We'll have to see what becomes of Kidman later in the story, but it's definitely an interesting situation she's found herself in. Going off on a bit of a spiel here, a big part of the first game was the fight for Leslie. Leslie Withers was an important character due to the implications he had on the STEM system. The STEM needs a core mind to function properly, someone to be at the center of the machine in order for it to operate. Through trial and error, it was found that no other candidate besides Leslie could survive being connected to the STEM. Not only that, but Leslie could be easily influenced in order to serve the purposes of whoever wanted to take control of the STEM. A part of that remains true here. The STEM still needs a core, and they still need someone really easily influenced and capable of surviving the connection, but with Mobius's larger funding, they were able to find a more reliable core for the STEM. Children. Lily Castellanos was chosen to be the core of this new STEM system. According to the administrator, Lily was the most stable candidate they had ever tested for this task. Sebastian is enraged by this. Mobius had caused him unimaginable pain 3 years ago, and he's just learned that they kidnapped his daughter, likely using the fire as a cover-up. The administrator tells Sebastian that his daughter is in trouble. Though they had found great success in using Lily as a core for the STEM, a few weeks ago they lost contact with her, and despite sending in a team of Mobius agents to track her down, they haven't found a trace of her. He offers Sebastian the opportunity to make up for not being able to save his daughter from the fire, giving him the chance to prove himself and overcome the immense guilt by saving her now. Sebastian reluctantly agrees, and is once again placed into a tub and connected back into the STEM. Before he's transferred, Kidman shares a few words of advice with Sebastian, telling him to try and locate Mobius agents inside the STEM for help, and that there's someone waiting for him inside. Okay, this game starts with a lot of exposition, so thanks for sticking through it with me. Soon after this ethereal entrance sequence, we'll actually be able to talk about the meat of the game, its mechanics, its worlds, and some returning features from the first Evil Within. After dropping into the map, Sebastian runs through the void, reliving a few wonderful memories, before finding a radio and having his old office load in. The radio is a direct line back out into reality. Sebastian can use it to talk to Kidman and pass along mission details, which is the first thing we do. Kidman tells us to take a look around the office for some info they've sent in with him, and while we do that, let's talk about this place for a bit. So, this game has 2 types of safe rooms, and this is one of them. It's very creatively named Sebastian's Room, and it's the area that we'll be teleported to when using those familiar mirrors. In here, we can save the game, look at collectibles, upgrade our abilities, and find new mission information as the game progresses. Speaking of, we find what Kidman was hinting towards, a board with details on the missing Mobius team. Our first goal is to find any of these 5 individuals and see what kind of info we can shake them for. Kidman also tells us that this time around, we'll be exploring the fictional town of Union. With the improvements to the STEM system, Mobius was able to simulate their own entire town. We don't know the purpose for this just yet, but rest assured, there's a whole lot to learn about this place and the people that inhabit it. Now, while I was reviewing the info board, I got interrupted by a strange sound. Bill Baker. Will Baker. Is that a fucking cat meowing? What is happening? I thought that was my cat. Oh, shit! Oh! I was very excited to see this little guy return. Actually, he was how you saved the game in Kidman's DLCs, and coincidentally, the best part about those DLCs. Honestly, he's just here for nostalgia, I suppose. He joins us in watching these projector reels we can find throughout the game. They give more insight into how Sebastian thinks and feels about his situation. Actually, the cat's got one for us right now. This first reel is about Sebastian's family, how he's dealing with the fact that his missing wife and dead daughter have suddenly made their way back into his life. He blames Kidman for keeping this secret from him, and berates her for pretending to be his friend. After leaving Sebastian's room, we get a short flashback of Sebastian at home before his family was lost. It gives us a glimpse into who Sebastian was before Beacon, a caring father and loving husband, expanding on what was a fairly basic character in the first game. By the way, am I the only one that thinks he looks a little like Bruce Campbell here? I think all he needs is a chainsaw for a hand and the party can really get started. Finally, after just over 30 minutes, We can actually start exploring the world. Well, kinda. We start off in essentially the tutorial section. It's this very grand and dreamlike hotel, where the halls stop and start suddenly, like jagged puzzle pieces, only connected by long stretches of emptiness. Now, this is the overarching theme of this game. We've mostly moved on from the grit and gore of much of the first game to this uncanny or liminal design. It's actually pretty similar to how a lot of the final chapters of The Evil Within 1 felt, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss the tone of the first game. Now, thank God, while exploring the hotel, we get a glimpse of some of the major improvements that have been made to this game's mechanics. Oh my god, it's a fucking Christmas miracle. I can run for more than 3 seconds. Holy shit. Wow, do I still... Oh my god, they've learned so much! So much! I don't stop in place and pant for 15 seconds straight. Oh, this is wonderful. Sebastian, despite being an alcoholic, has clearly focused on his cardio since our time in Beacon, and I, for one, could not be more ecstatic. This game improves on most, if not all, of the complaints I had with the movement and combat of its predecessor, which was incredible, and we'll have plenty more examples of this soon. First, we've got to make our way through the twisting halls of this hotel. And I do mean twisting. Reality itself bends every time we turn our backs. Doors and hallways appear out of thin air, and this all builds up to an interesting conclusion.
What the hell?
It's hard to describe what we're looking at here, but what we do know is that we found our first member of that Mobius team. Inside this room sits a cube of time dilation. It's not solid, allowing Sebastian to step inside, but I think the most damning feature of this cube is the headshot playing on loop inside of it. Someone capped this poor bastard and trapped him inside this cube to relive that moment forever. The camera is set up on the outside to capture the whole thing. Nearby, we find a red room with developing photos of this incident. Clearly, someone thinks this is a work of art, and I am sure we will meet them soon. For now, we're made to wander more halls of this hotel, each one becoming more strange than the last, when finally we come across our photographer. Oh, hello. Oh my god. Okay, I see.
What was that?
What was that? We don't have any weapons to take him on right now, so our only choice is to hide. This is where we're introduced to a new and improved stealth system. Thank fucking God. We're able to take cover and smoothly move around corners to avoid detection from enemies. This is just a small sample of this new system, so more on that later. The photographer passes by, leaving Sebastian undetected, and we push through the hotel. This puts us in somewhat of a loop. The hotel warps back into some rooms we've already explored, but weird shit starts happening. Room service. We still don't find any weapons throughout the hotel, so there's little we can do besides be a victim for much of our stay here. We do find another art installation, looking even more fucked up than the last, and to top it all off, the photographer is now acutely aware of our presence here. Not the best photo of Sebastian, but we've certainly seen worse. Oh, hey, look at that. Fuck me. This is our first creature of the game, and what an introduction. Starting strong, we've got a very cool looking enemy here, and I expected no less from the excellent monster designs of the first game. Now, need I remind you, still no weapons, so we spend the next few minutes running away from this thing, until we're kindly gifted a knife by the photographer. Don't even look back. Stop looking back. I guarantee you she's still there, you don't have to look back. Oh! Thank God he lended that to us, saved our life from Buzzsaw back here. After getting a haircut on the way out, Sebastian jumps into a void and finally finds himself inside the simulated town of Union. Only took us an hour, but who's counting? One of the first things I did when I got here was check the map, and I noticed probably the biggest change made in the sequel, the inclusion of an open world. It's a major difference from the narrow halls of Beacon, and I couldn't even begin to imagine what this meant for the gameplay. I had never played a horror game with an open world to this extent, so I was pretty excited to dive in. Before we can do that, however, we still have a few more introductions to run through. And of course, we've got to talk about some of the new mechanics this game offers. On our way out of the house we spawned in, Sebastian finds himself a handgun. Can I get a gun, perhaps? Oh, ask and you shall receive. And finding a weapon always bodes well for the protagonists of horror games. Yeah, we head over to the neighbors and find a scene right out of RE7.
I said eat!
With Marguerite taken care of, we head over to our first real demo of the combat system. And I gotta say, this game feels really nice. We hear some gunshots in the distance and catch up to see another member of that Mobius team we need to find, Liam. He gets his buddy killed and holes up in this abandoned building, leaving us to deal with the horde outside. Now, as apprehensive as I was to test out the stealth system after the shitty experience of the Kidman DLCs, I'm happy to say that the stealth is massively improved in this game. I mean, it's not hard to beat when the bar was in hell, but I'm just happy Sebastian doesn't wind back those bottles like a fucking idiot again. In all seriousness, the stealth is very polished in this game. In fact, I spent majority of my time using these stealth mechanics. Taking cover, hiding in bushes, noise detection, it's all there and it was very intuitive. The stealth system is helped by the fact that the enemies are dumb as shit in this game. If you're spotted, they can lose you almost instantly upon rounding a corner. They lack some serious object permanence skills, at least in the normal difficulty. There were even times where I'd be actively shooting or slashing at an enemy, and I'd get the option to stealth kill them while directly in their face. This did get a little disappointing at times. In general, I'd say this game is fairly easy, especially when compared to the difficulty of the first game, but I still had fun with the combat, so I guess that's what counts. Now, on the other hand, when you're not being stealthy, running and gunning also feels really good in this game. Sebastian's movements are snappy, and most of the guns we'll come to find feel excellent to use. Albeit Sebastian does have difficulty navigating the terrain sometimes. There were more than a few moments where he would automatically climb on top of a car or a wall or something, and that led to me taking damage, which was annoying. Also, sometimes the game will take actions for you, like snapping into cover automatically, which can ruin your game plan. These things didn't happen too often, to the point where it was an active detriment to the game, but they did happen far more than once, just enough to be a slight annoyance. Still, I'd take this over Sebastian's sluggish movements of the first game any day. It took me a couple tries and finding a cheese strat, but I eventually cleared out the horde surrounding the building. All that's left is to greet the locals. Surprisingly, this little bastard isn't happy to see us and holds Sebastian at gunpoint, despite us clearly showing that we aren't a threat. And luckily, he's a dumbass and keeps the safety on, allowing Sebastian to disarm him and strike up a friendly conversation. This is Liam O'Neill, a technician sent in with the team to try and fix the problem with the core. You see, Mobius didn't realize the scope of what was going on in here, so they sent in IT to fix things up, not realizing they'd be sending them to an active war zone. Most of the team Mobius sent in were not trained in combat, leading them to scatter all over Union and hold up in safe houses until help hopefully arrived. O'Neill will come to realize that Sebastian is about the only help he's gonna get, so he decides to hook us up with some crucial information. While out looking for the core, his team was tracking a signal using their communicator, that signal sounding an awful lot like a little girl's voice. This gets Sebastian all riled up, and he wants to immediately head back out to track Lily down, but hold your horses, Sebastian. We've got a lot of looting to do. Before that, though, I wanted to point out the conversation system is very unique in this game. Basically, instead of pre-rendered cutscenes, we get these RPG-style dialogue options to choose from, which was very jarring, and I wasn't a huge fan of it, but at least we got more lore from it, so I guess it wasn't all bad. I ask O'Neill as much as I can and learn about a few other signals we can explore in a bit, but I wanted to take a look around the safe room. So, as a bit of a departure from the first game, we've got a whole bunch of new supplies together. There's a crafting mechanic here, which means instead of finding our ammo scattered across the world, we'll mostly need to find the components to craft it ourselves. Along with these components, another new resource added to the game are weapon parts. In the first Evil Within, upgrading Sebastian's abilities and weapons both used green gel, which often made you decide which was more important to you at the moment. Here, though, those categories are separated. While green gel is still used to upgrade Sebastian's personal abilities, weapon parts are used to upgrade his guns. This lets you explore more options with your loadout, and I think was a good decision overall. Now finally, we've got these coffee pots, which Sebastian can use as a free full heal. Drinking coffee will restore all of Sebastian's health, but there's a long cooldown before you can use the same pot twice. Most safe rooms we'll come across will also have a mirror back to Sebastian's room, where we can take a look at his green gel abilities and meet back up with Tatiana. Yeah, even though she mysteriously vanished near the end of the first game, she's back for round 2, greeting Sebastian as he takes a seat back in the old salt trap. As far as the abilities go, there's some really cool stuff in here. I never felt like my money wasn't well spent. We'll talk about some specific abilities as I unlock them, but for now, I think it's about time we head out into that open world. Now, in most of my videos, and if you've been here for a while, you'll know, I usually make it a point to let you know that I spend a lot of time looking for supplies or notes in these games, so I cut out all the boring bits of me scavenging for stuff and skip to the most important parts. But that has never been more prevalent than it is right now. I do my best to try and explore every inch of the games I cover to make the best video I can for you all. And that is no different with this game. So I spent the next 5 hours of my time playing this game, looking through every building, every street, every goddamn trash can to get the fullest experience possible. So, needless to say, we're going to be doing a few skips here. Of course, I'll make sure to highlight the most important story bits and gameplay mechanics, and thankfully there's quite a bit of world events and side missions that can happen as we explore, so this should still be interesting for you guys. Now, I am going to try to be as concise as possible, because, again, we're talking about 5 hours worth of exploring here, and I'm sure I missed some stuff along the way, so if you think at any point I should have expanded on something or I missed something crucial, let me know in the comments. Okay, first things first, very similar to the experience of Beacon, this town is falling apart. Massive chasms are tearing through the town, and large chunks of land are now floating in the sky. It looks a lot like what we dealt with previously, so by all means, Sebastian should be well prepared for what's to come. And the streets and buildings are full of monsters, so it won't be easy to get through this place, but thankfully, once you kill them, they don't seem to respawn. That's something you might have noticed, we haven't talked about the matches. Matches were a big part of the first game, allowing you to keep enemies down after defeating them, but they aren't in The Evil Within 2. It's kinda strange that they chose not to include the matches here. I felt like that was a big part of The Evil Within's identity, and to be honest, I think the game could have really benefited from them. In the first game, although they were handy, the matches admittedly didn't matter too much. Because of the linear nature of the first game, you could be relatively sure that you wouldn't revisit an area after you left. But in an open world game like this, where you're encouraged to explore and revisit places, using matches on enemies to ensure an area would be safe would have been crucial. I don't know, I thought it was a bit of a missed opportunity. Right off the bat, there's a few objectives just outside of O'Neill's safe house. The first being a broken sniper rifle on a rooftop. We'll have to track down some replacement parts if we want to use it. Next, we head into a nearby church, where we find a priest praying for his salvation. That didn't seem to work though, as we watch the soul get sucked out of him. This seems to be what happens to the citizens of this faux town, how they turn into these monsters. Speaking of the town, throughout the world we'll gather pieces of a story that explain to us how things got to where they are now. All we know currently is that Mobius designed this place to look like an amalgamation of small-town American life. They wanted to keep the population calm and suppressed. How these people got inside the stem, though, remains to be seen. In one of the unassuming houses I explored, we find this bunker underneath it. Inside this bunker is what seems to be a server room with a single computer hooked into various machines. Interacting with said computer sends us to a place called the Marrow. We have no fucking clue what's going on or why we're running in the void, but as we're loaded in, we find ourselves in a Mobius facility. It looks like there's a web of simulations running through the stem, and this string is only accessible to Mobius agents. Exploring this facility doesn't provide us with any answers as to where we are right now, but I'm sure we'll learn more about this place in the future. And what we can find down here is a new variant of the creatures. This woman wields a knife and is faster and more resilient than her counterparts, even resisting being stealth attacked. At the end of this facility, just before we head back out, we have to crack open this locked door by matching these frequencies on this datapad. Thankfully, all my time in the Outlast trials had prepared me for this moment, and we find ourselves a sawed-off shotgun. Ooh-wee! Good old shotgun! A bit later, back on the surface, we find and pick up the trusty old crossbow. It works basically the same as the first iteration, with its different flavors of bolts. This technically makes the fourth weapon we found this early into the story, and just like the first game, I did feel kinda weird about this. The Evil Within has a tendency to load you up very early into the experience, and as always, the more supplies you have in a horror game, the less tension there is in the world around you. I guess it feels a bit better knowing that I purposefully went out of my way to explore and just happened to find these weapons, but maybe they could have been a bit more challenging to get. Anyway, with the crossbow in hand, that meant we had access to the harpoon bolts, and harpoon bolts meant we could upgrade to my dearly beloved fire bolts that were so close to my heart in the first game. I spent every goddamn weapon part I would find on these bolts, and I guess we'll have to see if the fire bolts still hold up here. Let's take a break from the mundane item collecting and talk about this really interesting sequence that sheds some light on Sebastian's psyche. In one house of this neighborhood, we stumble across a psychological evaluation report mandated on Sebastian after the events of Beacon. In order to continue his work as a detective for the KCPD, he had to undergo a few tests to determine his sanity. Picking up this file, though, it causes the world around us to shift. Instead of walking back out into the simple home we found this file in, the house warps and grows this sinister tone, where eventually we'll find a half-torn document that shows Sebastian's results from his evaluation. The doctor that performed this test diagnoses Sebastian with paranoid delusions, claiming that the death of his daughter and whatever happened to Beacon has caused Sebastian to lose his grip on reality. The file ends on a cliffhanger, with the doctor deciding whether Sebastian is fit to continue working at the KCPD. And suddenly, we're transported back to Beacon.
It was just a fever dream. A figment of your imagination.
It wasn't a dream. I was inside of a killer's mind. It was as real as you are.
That may be. But what good is it to hang on to this version of reality? Perhaps if we disabuse you of this notion, things will go more smoothly for you.
Through the flashes of the past conversations with his psychiatrist and the long, empty halls of Beacon Mental Hospital, it's clear that even this version of the stem can still use its inhabitants' own memories against them. While it seems like Mobius has more control over the world this time around, that clearly doesn't mean there aren't holes in this reality, allowing Sebastian's darkest moments to peek through this small-town veil. At the end of the sequence, we grab a new projector slide and almost catch up with a past version of Sebastian, before Laura's claws drag us through the ground and back to Union. Now, something I noticed during those cutscenes with the psychiatrist was that Sebastian definitely was talking about his experience like he was insane, which was really weird to me. By the end of the first game, Sebastian was well aware of everything going on behind the scenes. He knew all about Ruvik and Mobius, Dr. Jimenez's role, Kidman's affiliation with a bigger entity, yet here he talks about it like he's trying to score a prescription, for God's sake. I don't know, it felt like weird writing to me. Sebastian knew a lot more than he was letting on with the shrink. Just across the street is a similar experience. We explore an abandoned home, pick up a file, this time a journal that talks about some sort of entity haunting this place. And then things get very paranormal in here. A sofa flies across the living room. as they do, and Sebastian is chased by an actual demon. Maybe she just hates sofas. Oh, just kidding. Yeah, we're not getting much of an explanation for this one. We're once again casted back into Beacon as we sneak around the place, hiding from the lullaby ghost until we find an exit. This causes Sebastian to have more flashes of his grand adventure at Beacon, and leaves us with another projector slide. Now again, there's zero explanation as to what the fuck just happened to us, or who that thing was. But interestingly, this event has lingering effects. Once we encounter this ghost, she's released into Union, and will randomly appear around the world, haunting the area until we get far enough away from her. There's no way to fight her, and touching her is a guaranteed death. So, to sum this up, this was always a lovely experience. In my travels, off in the distance, I spotted a weird smoking enemy. What the fuck is that? I thought it'd be fine, considering it was out of the way of anywhere I wanted to go, but, things didn't stay that way for long. Guarding the replacement parts for that sniper rifle we grabbed is another grotesque smoking creature. And as I would soon find out, that smoke is poisonous. We're okay?
Shit.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Now, while this thing looks fucking awesome, it sucks to deal with. As soon as it spots you, it drains all of your stamina and starts shooting poison balls at you. In the effort to not get caught by this thing, I used these new smoke bolts I picked up for the crossbow to give myself some cover, allowing us to sneak in and grab the sniper parts. Thank God we did. Now, later on, I would learn just how deadly these things can be, but with the sniper, all it takes is one headshot. Now, taking a pause at a safe house, I wanted to review the 2 projector slides we've picked up so far. The first isn't too special. It's just Sebastian reminiscing with Kidman about their time at Beacon. You know, the good old days. But we do get our first mention of Ruvik here. It's kind of crazy it took so long for him to be mentioned, especially since we know he accomplished his goal of obtaining Leslie, and that Mobius took his brain God knows where. I just thought he'd play a bigger part in this game, but even now, he's just a memory. Around the world, there's these shadows called residual memories. They're essentially echoes from the past, and allow us to see the events that unfolded during the fall of Union. There's a ton of them to discover, each lending a hand to their own storyline, like a previous victim of that poltergeist we encountered, or Mobius agents establishing the safe houses. But the one I want to focus on is a series of side missions that shows us the complete disregard several Mobius agents had for the citizens of Union, and even each other once shit hit the fan. In this side story, we follow 2 Mobius agents just as the town began to fall apart. Contact had been lost between them and the rest of Mobius, so naturally, they decide the first thing they're gonna do is kill anyone in sight. Yeah, their plan is to secure all the safe houses and weapon caches for themselves and gun down anyone they come across along the way, human or monster. We follow their trail to each safe house, learning that they would eventually split up, with one heading to the armory and the other going to the visitor center, where he told a group of survivors to hide out until help arrived. Help was never going to arrive, however. His plan was to round them all up in one place so they'd be easier to kill before they got the chance to turn into monsters. These guys are sick. I mean, we've known this for a while. Mobius will stop at nothing to achieve their goals, but we haven't seen this kind of thing firsthand before. It just puts it into perspective how depraved these people are. Unfortunately for one of these guys, they're interrupted and captured by our old friend the photographer. And that can only mean one thing.
Don't move. Oh shit! Oh shit! Help! Somebody help me! I said don't move. Now, let's make some hearts.
That's where this story ends. But still, we got a peek behind Mobius's madness, and how far they're willing to go to protect themselves. If this is what we can expect from the other Mobius agents across this place, I don't have high hopes for the agents we've been tasked to track down. I mean, fuck, O'Neill is already on thin ice with some of the shit he said. Alright, with that side quest complete, I was content to continue the main story. I'd explored everything I could find and headed towards that signal of Lily's voice. This would lead us to a gas station, where through a residual memory, we'd find out that Lily was being chased by someone. As we investigate the gas station for any clues, we're attacked by a new enemy, these animalistic creatures called spawns. They're quick and deadly, but we survive the encounter and continue the search for Lily. We follow her signal and memories across the map, eventually landing us in a warehouse where we discover that Lily was being stalked, chased, and ultimately captured by that photographer. And we know what that freak does to the people he captures, so Sebastian kicks into high gear to catch up with him. There's gonna be monsters on the way out of here. I can tell you right now, I'm not gonna leave this area without a boss fight. I'm calling it, I feel it. I'm seeing it, I'm sensing it. Look at that. Look at that! They've got that place perfectly right there. So I'm gonna walk over there, bend over and pick it up, and a monster's gonna come out and fuck me. Yeah, I figured it wouldn't be that easy. And we slip back into what we can assume is the photographer's reality, seeing more of his grotesque art installments before we follow him back into Union. Sebastian tries to get answers from him, but he turns into a giant floating eyeball and summons a group of these fucked up dogs. With the photographer gone, and no leads on Lily, Sebastian turns to O'Neill for answers. And luckily, he has one. He tells us he's getting another signal from the town hall, but the town hall is currently in orbit. Maybe O'Neill has a rocket ship waiting for us. It tells us he's got a plan to get us up there, so we head on back and meet up with him. After getting some answers, it looks like we won't be using a rocket ship, but we will be heading back into the Marrow. O'Neill explains to us that the Marrow essentially functions as a portal, letting us travel to and from different areas of Union. These areas were meant to be discreet, so Mobius agents could report back on the town and its citizens. He gives us a password to use a terminal that's on the opposite side of town. I was a little pissed that he couldn't say all that over the radio, but conveniently, this Marrow tunnel has a gas leak, so he hands us a gas mask to use. I suppose I'll allow it. Thanks, O'Neill. After fighting my way through hordes of enemies, we arrive at the terminal and head into this section of the Marrow. There's a few interesting things we can pick up while navigating through this place. For instance, we can find early drafts and expansions to the town of Union. A nearby note tells us that due to the population growth, Mobius will have to design new sections of the map. It's like they're playing a fucked up game of Sims, which is kind of funny, the way they talk about it. Oh, and by the way, we've picked up a couple of notes by this point that explain a bit about how Mobius is finding people to populate Union. There are these places called Mu Centers, which act as a faux religious organization Mobius had set up to brainwash and indoctrinate people into entering the STEM. We're gonna go in depth on this way later in the story. I just didn't want to leave you guessing for too long. We come across that gas leak O'Neill mentioned, which forces us in a first-person perspective. We aren't allowed to use our guns here either. Rumor has it, gas and fire don't mix well. I do kind of wish they'd let us use them anyway. There was a very similar section of the first game that allowed you to use your guns and resulted in a very funny cutscene. Once we escape the gas leak, we find a very damning note that reveals Mobius's grand scheme with this new STEM. We read that each citizen of Union adds 100 exabytes of storage to STEM. With enough storage space, Mobius claims to be able to activate a wireless version of the STEM that will transmit a signal across the entire planet, capturing and implanting every human into the STEM. Of course, Mobius has thought ahead and implanted chips into the brains of its agents to block this signal. Everyone else, though, they're a part of the Union welcome party. They want to accomplish world domination, to control the minds of every living human, using them to do anything they'd like with no limit. And while our primary goal is to save Lily, that won't matter much if we all end up back in Union anyway. So I guess we'll have to see if anything can be done to stop Mobius along the way. We finally reach the other side of this Marrow section and emerge out into the basement of the town hall, maybe? Before we head topside to get our bearings, I decided to head into a nearby mirror and found a special surprise waiting in Sebastian's room. A new door has materialized in here, giving us access to a shooting gallery game. Tatiana introduces this thing to us. It's very RE4 remake style, allowing us to tackle different challenges and unlock prizes with high scores. It was very fun, and I spent a lot of time here. No! I have to get this. I have to. I need it so bad. Because at least I get the points. No! I have to restart. God damn it. Ooh, this is rough. Dude, how the fuck did that not hit? Oh! Ah! Ah! Oh my god. Oh my god. Let me out. Oh, save my game. I don't even care. Save it. Save it right now. Oh. I've never felt better. Truly, it was a story of perseverance. I don't think anyone has ever gotten a higher score, and I won't be taking feedback at this time. With the green gel I unlocked by completing that challenge, I got a cool ability that increases bullet damage with each successive shot. This should be pretty helpful for any bosses we encounter. I also had enough weapon parts to fully upgrade the harpoon bolts and unlocked their fire ability. I guess the only thing to do now is to try them out. So we head back out and see where we ended up. I don't even know where we are right now. I forgot there was an actual game behind this. Holy shit, that was exhilarating. We're actually just across the street from City Hall, and taking a look at the map, we get a feel for the gameplay loop. We'll be using the Marrow to travel to different islands of Union, and although every area we explore will be significantly smaller than that initial section we dropped into, they're still open world, and you can explore them freely. Thankfully, there isn't nearly as much to these other sections as there were to the first, so we don't have to spend too much time going over everything in them. Anyways, as we approach City Hall, we see our photographer teleporting inside. Sebastian runs to catch up and finds that he's been waiting for us. Oh, but don't worry, a cute little message isn't the only thing he's left for us. He uses his giant floating eye to summon his pet buzzsaw lady again, but this time we actually get to fight her, and she was no match for the raw power that is the firebolt. Oh, wait till you get a fucking load of this, you dumb bitch. Woo! Oh, you ain't like that one, huh? Hold on, I got 4 more where that came from. With the buzzsaw down, we're free to enter the building, where we find another Mobius agent. Harrison here isn't doing so hot, and with his dying breath, tells us that we need to activate something called the stable field emitter. Without activating it, Union will fall apart even further, and finding Lily will become impossible. On our way towards the emitter, we find a few puzzles and messages laid out for Sebastian. And this dude seems to have a lot of fucking time on his hands. He forces us to appreciate his art, and who am I to not oblige? But along the way, we find a newspaper clipping that features one of his earliest victims. Of course, he carried out his usual MO, but the more interesting part is that we actually get a name for him. Stefano Valentini. And we continue marching through these gigantic ass halls, where doors appear and disappear out of thin air. Eventually, we find our way to a showroom, getting a tease for a monster we'll soon face. Oh, hey girl. Oh, did we slap her? What was that? Oh, wow. Just past this room lies the emitter, and Sebastian runs to start the machine, but this is a fucking boss room if I've ever seen one. When the machine starts, it announces a 90-second countdown before it activates, and that signals Stefano to its location. As Stefano pushes open the heavy double doors to this room, Sebastian quickly goes to draw his gun, but it's too late. Stefano captures Sebastian in one of those time bubbles, the same ones he had trapped his victims in at the moment of their death. Stefano teases us for a while, says he knows we're after Lily, but we aren't the only ones. I guess being the core of an entire reality makes you a hot commodity around these parts, and with Stefano having captured Lily, he's got a lot of power over Union. He could have killed Sebastian right here, but I suppose he wants to toy with us, as he summons that monster we got a peek at earlier, the Obscura.
Son of a bitch!
This thing is one of the most interesting monster designs in the entire game. It's super freaky and very cool to look at, but unfortunately, fighting it isn't really our goal here. It uses Stefano's time-warping ability to stop the emitter's countdown, and our job is to both ensure the countdown continues and survive being chased by this thing. I'm not even sure if you can kill it. All I know is that my firebolts didn't do much in the way of putting this thing down. When the field emitter finally triggers, it causes Obscura to start tweaking out and then just disappear. And well, with that handled, I guess let's go see the damage. We start to walk back outside, picking up a few notes in the process. These notes serve to just fill in more of our understanding about how Union functions. We learn that anyone Mobius puts into the stem has their memories overwritten to make it appear to them like they've always lived here. They also make it a point to normalize union as much as possible, creating fake elections, the city hall. These poor bastards can't even escape the DMV, complete with the 50 pages of paperwork you gotta bring with you. These Mobius fuckers are truly evil. Anyway, we make it outside and things look normal. Well, our fucked up version of normal, that is. And we get a quick pep talk from Kidman and decide to see if O'Neill can help us track down Stefano again. O'Neill comes through and traces the signal to a local theater. I say local, but we'll have to do some traveling through the Marrow to get to that island. While we're doing that, I wanted to talk about Stefano for a second. This whole time, he's been bothering me with just how big of a role he's played in the story. I mean, he was the first villain or monster we encountered, and we've seen him several times since. Now he's got Lily and is a key part of the first half of the game, yet that's all we know about him. Comparing him to Ruvik from the first game, I mean, we knew damn near Ruvik's entire backstory by this point. I just found it bizarre that Stefano ended up being such a huge part of this game. I don't feel that he's nearly as interesting as his role in the story implies. We've got a couple more facts to learn about him, so maybe it's just too early to say, but I wasn't too impressed with Stefano. This trip through the Marrow was largely uneventful, except for the key fact that part of this tunnel was covered in a sticky white substance. I'm thinking it, you're thinking it, let's just push past this. We do stumble across a flashback to a conversation Sebastian and Myra had before her disappearance, where she tells Sebastian that a secret society had faked Lily's death and she wanted to track them down. This confused me even more about a detail I had struggled to understand in the first game, the files Myra left for Sebastian after her disappearance. We know that Myra had been investigating Mobius and begged Sebastian to continue looking into Lily's supposed death after she disappeared to join Mobius, but I still don't know what those files could have possibly had in them. If they were actually a part of Myra's investigation into Mobius, Sebastian would have known about Mobius and the stem long before entering Beacon, but we know that wasn't the case. If they were intentionally misleading to pull Sebastian away from ever finding out about Mobius's existence, what would be the point of leaving them in the first place? He was already convinced Myra was losing her mind. I don't know, I just couldn't see an angle here. What could have been in those files that both didn't reveal Mobius or the stem, but also completely changed Sebastian's opinion on his wife's mental state and encouraged him to look into his daughter's death? I guess that all depends on Myra's role in Mobius, which we still haven't seen yet. And my thoughts were interrupted by the source of the sticky white substance making an appearance. Oh my god. And we're gonna have to fight the fucking splooge demon. I don't know why. What kind of power is this? Are you fucking serious? What the hell is this thing? What am I looking at?
The size of that thing.
Can I get some context as to why this thing's here? You throw me a document or something? Because I'm a little bewildered right now. Yeah, well, Stay Puffed here gets to see another day. Our objective is to run past it, and once we do, we find that someone has been watching us throughout the Marrow.
Someone's been watching. Lily.
Is she in there?
Whoever's been here was gathering data on her.
Don't move.
This is Yukiko Hoffman. Just like O'Neill, a tech sent in to find and stabilize the core. After proving that we're here to help, and that Sebastian isn't dead, a lie told to her and Lily, Hoffman agrees to help us out. She also gives us a bit of info on Stefano. She tells us that since Stefano is highly intelligent and a sociopath, he was able to slip through the cracks of Mobius's rigorous mental tests and worm his way into the stem. Apparently, sociopaths, or people with severe mental disorders, have higher control over the stem, something that Ruvik was keen to. This is what gave Stefano his powers and allows him to control the world around us. Side note, Hoffman's face is super uncanny. She looks like one of those early attempts at facial motion capture. I have no idea why they did this to her and no one else. Continuing our info dump on Stefano, Kidman transfers some files on him to our room, where we learn how Stefano got his taste for blood.
Stefano Valentini, artist. Yeah, that's him all right.
He's quite a flamboyant character. Seems he never reached the level of success that he wanted.
Sounds familiar. I know of another flamboyant artist who failed.
What the fuck?
Then he started World War II.
So this one isn't that bad.
Even if he's not.
It's
he still
crazy.
needs-
Stefano was a war photographer and risked his life to capture a photo of the exact moment a soldier was hit with an explosive. Though this photo would cost him his eye, with a piece of flying shrapnel piercing it, it awakened his creative rebirth and inspired him to start slaughtering people. Yeah, that's about wraps on his backstory. There's not much else to know about him. I don't know, I wouldn't say Ruvik had the most compelling backstory I've ever heard, but he damn sure had a lot more than this. So, again, I just was kind of disappointed about how involved Stefano was in this story. It's about time we head towards the theater to have our showdown with Stefano. And again, this is a whole new area to explore, I'll be skipping around, you know the drill. This place is a little more dangerous. We have a couple run-ins with the buzzsaw lady and our favorite poltergeist, which of course means another trip down memory lane for Sebastian. We're still given no context about this monster, by the way. We don't know what it is, why it's haunting Sebastian, and why it seems to always bring him back to Beacon. It might be more of a symbolic monster, but that's just speculation for now. We'll also come across a new weapon, which functions pretty interestingly. It's another shotgun, a full-barreled shotgun to be exact, and it's essentially a variant of the shotgun we already have. We'll find a few more of these types of weapons throughout the game, different models of pistols and shotguns which can be used interchangeably and have various effects. Additionally, any upgrades we apply to the default shotgun will also apply to every shotgun variant. Same goes for all other weapon types. Eventually, we'll stumble across our 5th Mobius agent, who's struggling to defend himself from a horde of monsters. And we step in to help him out, but fuck, he wasn't kidding. There are a ton of these bastards. A couple of failed attempts later, and we finally clear them all out and get to talk to our new pal here, Sykes. Sykes is, wouldn't you know it, another tech sent in to stabilize the core. But out of the 3 remaining agents, he's the only one with some goddamn sense. Sykes is actively trying to find a way out of STEM, but he lacks the muscle to carry out his plan. He wants us to head back into the Marrow and re-enable a server down there, allowing him to enact his escape plan. And in return, he'll unlock these sealed crates for us. That was more than enough to sell me, so we hop right to it, jumping through the nearest terminal and heading over to this server. Getting there is easy enough, literally just a short walk through the Marrow. Once we turn the thing on though, and the place fills with monsters and we've got to fight our way back to Sykes. Or run past them all, they're too dumb to keep up. That's a future me problem, back there. Do not go outside, girl. With the mission complete, Sykes thanks us and lets us know he's got a lot of work to do before he can find a way out. We exchange numbers to keep in contact with him, but for now, we leave him be. Now, our reward for completing this mission is a silenced pistol, which at first glance sounds awesome, if they didn't drag the damage down to hell. Yeah, this thing hits like a water gun. They actually recommend to use it for luring enemies away with its sound. They must have lost their goddamn minds. There is no way in hell you'll catch me wasting a bullet to accomplish the same goal as a fucking bottle. Well, I guess that about wraps up everything for this section of Union. And we head towards the theater, but we're quickly blocked by a couple of Stefano's photos. He wants us to appreciate his art again, go figure. So we're forced to run around the town to find copies of these photos and destroy them. Attempting to do so drags us back into Stefano's hotel. And for both of these photos, we have to grab a key and fight our way back to Union, and once that's all said and done, we'll be granted access to the theater. The theater is a fairly straightforward experience, and we explore the biggest goddamn theater I've ever seen, while Stefano curses us for destroying his art, and that he's a tortured artist, and everyone is gonna know his name, and yeah, whatever, dog. This all comes to a head when we discover his latest art installation. We enter an auditorium and find seats filled with the citizens of Union. They're all dressed in plain white formal attire, and bags cover their faces. As Sebastian approaches the center stage, the lights flip on to reveal Stefano. He goes on for a while with his artsy bullshit, but he does reveal some important information regarding Lily. According to Stefano, he was ordered by some higher power to capture her, but once he realized Lily's capabilities, he decided to keep her for himself. to amplify his own powers. And once his speech is finished, he activates an explosive device attached to each and every citizen's head. Sebastian pleads for him to stop, but it's already too late. The explosives are triggered and waves of blood erupt from the audience, only to be captured mid-air inside of Stefano's time warp ability. After Sebastian collects himself, he tries to attack Stefano, but he teleports away from each bullet. So instead, Sebastian chases after him, leading to a warped and mangled area of the stem, one that Stefano seems to have complete control over. This is the beginning of Stefano's boss fight, and it starts with Sebastian having to navigate through the debris of the hotel. We'll have to jump from broken cluster to cluster, all while avoiding Stefano's all-seeing eye. This is pretty simple, as you could imagine, just don't touch the giant beam of light. The actual fight begins as soon as we make it to the other side of this void. Stefano is threatening Lily, which doesn't make a lot of sense. We know that he needs her for his power, but whatever, and says that Sebastian will become his latest piece. With that said, he launches into our fight.
No more running. No more games.
Agreed. You're beginning to bore me. Your death will be art.
Stefano isn't too difficult. He mainly uses his teleportation ability to jump around the arena, which can sometimes cause you to miss a shot, but more so he uses it to close the gap between us. It would probably be more effective if he picked up his pace from a casual stroll, but who am I to complain? He also throws his mini sword at you, giving him a ranged attack, but this is pretty easy to dodge as well. With just a few shots of my firebolts, we knock him into phase 2, where he calls upon the power of the giant eye and uses its tentacles to swipe at us from above. He also gets a bit faster here and uses his camera to make these time warps of explosions, I think. I don't know, I never stepped in one. This phase is definitely a step up, but still nothing we can't handle, especially after some of the crazy-ass boss fights of the first game. A couple minutes later, and the photographer that had served as our villain for half of the game is killed.
I had so much left to create. You've destroyed my legacy. Look at me. You made me into a masterpiece.
With his last breath, he reaches out to take one final photo, but Sebastian puts an end to that real quick.
Last photo.
With Stefano's death, the world around us melts back into the faux reality of Union, and standing behind Sebastian, witnessing the whole thing, was Lily. She screams in terror, not only because she just watched her father cap a guy, but remember, she thought her father was dead this whole time. She hides from Sebastian, likely thinking he's some sort of monster, and as Sebastian tries to calm her down, something wicked comes this way. That white substance melts away at the theater doors, and at first glance, I thought Ruvik had made his return, but this actually turns out to be...
Come to Mother, Lily. I will protect you.
Myra.
Well, another mystery on our hands, gang. Myra seems to have gone full psycho, gaining this unfortunate power and attacking Sebastian. She doesn't seem to recognize him, or if she does, she doesn't care. Once again, Lily is captured and whisked away by what appears to be a monster, despite it being her own mother. Was Myra the higher power Stefano was talking about? The one that requested Lily to be brought to her? And if so, what could she possibly want with Lily? Surely she wouldn't hurt her, and not after everything she did to track her down. Would she? I guess we'll have to find out. Or rather, we don't have much of a choice, as the sinkhole created by her power swallows Sebastian with it. Surprisingly, Sebastian wakes up back in his room, unscathed from the sinkhole. As he gathers himself, he remembers a strange word of advice Kidman had given him before he entered the stem. She had mentioned that someone would be waiting inside the stem for Sebastian, and he reasons that she was alluding to Myra. So I guess Kidman and Myra are working together? It certainly seems like it, and from the sound of it, doesn't feel like Kidman wanted anyone else in the room to know about this. Since we know that Myra was of sound mind before entering the STEM, at least she seemed to be in Kidman's DLC, we can reason that being in STEM has altered her mental state somehow. Maybe Kidman isn't a villain in this story, sending in Myra to help Sebastian locate Lily. We'll have to see what comes of this. Back to Sebastian, his room isn't exactly the same. Just past his office door, we see some sort of altar put together, very reminiscent of the cult from the first game. Approaching this altar sends Sebastian to a cult-ridden dungeon. Again, very similar to our past experience. As we explore this dungeon, a disembodied voice guides us towards the exit, practically begging us to find him. He doesn't, however, warn us about the assload of monsters we have to fight before getting out of here. Thanks for nothing. This place wasn't too bad. It is a little tight, so I think it was definitely the most challenging section so far, but that isn't saying much for this game. When we reach that exit, we're given a little impromptu therapy session by the voice of God, breaking down Sebastian's guilt and self-loathing. It ends just as quickly as it began, though, and in another callback to our beacon days, Sebastian falls from the floor and lands on the wall of another dungeon. And so begins the major theme of the second half of this game. Sebastian is forced to confront his demons head-on. The voice of his daughter, who he believes he failed, torments him by reading aloud messages scrawled along the dungeon walls, taunting Sebastian for not saving her. The male voice cuts in once again, telling Sebastian that he can help him overcome his trauma, and guides him through a void towards the memories of his past. As he approaches the silhouette of Lily, she bursts into flames and reveals a new fire-engulfed monster. We'll soon be thrown back into the dungeon where we encounter these new creatures for the first time. They're relatively the same as all of the other common monsters, but they do have the unique ability to burst into flames periodically, protecting them from stealth attacks. Really, this is more annoying to us than it is beneficial to them. It just forces us to time our stealth attacks. If we do it right, we never have to worry about it. Once these things are dealt with, the voice reveals that he was the one that wanted Lily brought to him. It tells us that because we killed Stefano, someone that defied him, we will be rewarded. Can't say I want that reward anymore. I was just starting to get comfortable with this guy, him helping Sebastian through his trauma and all. But if he wants Lily for himself, it likely means he wants to use her powers for something nefarious. It's not like we have much of a choice right now, though. We continue following the pathways he opens for us, ultimately leading us to a quick puzzle we have to solve. And once that's all said and done, we finally come face to face with the voice that's been guiding us. Allow me to introduce you to Theodore Wallace, or as he calls himself, Father Theodore.
Sebastian Castellanos, you've finally come. I've been waiting for you.
Who the hell are you?
My followers call me Father Theodore. I hope that you will call me that too, friend.
Father here graciously offers Sebastian to join him as one of his followers. He also reveals his true intentions, to capture Lily and gain control of the core. Naturally. In return, though, if Sebastian agrees to join his flock and help him capture Lily, he promises to reunite him with his daughter, reveal Myra's whereabouts, and even cleanse him of the trauma of his past. If you think that sounds too good to be true, you'd be right. Sebastian doesn't buy any of this, and only sees another psychopath trying to control his daughter. He refuses Theodore's offer and holds him at gunpoint, telling him that he's no different than Stefano. This disappoints Father Theodore, and although he tries again to convince Sebastian to join him, he ultimately decides that Sebastian isn't ready to open his mind yet, and tells Sebastian to find him again when he's been enlightened. He then summons a wave of blood to crash into Sebastian, knocking him out and teleporting him to a new area of Union. Before we find out where Sebastian ends up, I want to take a second to talk about Theodore Wallace, who I think is a significant upgrade from Stefano. Diving into Theodore's past for a bit, we've learned about his role in the story through a few notes we've gathered. I wanted to wait to talk about them all until we met Theodore, and here we are. In these notes, Mobius writes about an organization called the Muse Center, which we talked about a bit earlier. Now, Mu Centers are a series of operations launched by Theodore Wallace himself, under the guise of being a spiritual well-being clinic. Under this institution, Theodore would send out flyers and requests to the general public, giving them a spiritual test and ultimately drawing in those most susceptible to this type of manipulation. Mu Centers promised those who were recruited to find spiritual enlightenment and like-minded individuals to share experiences with and such. But in reality, this was all a front for Mobius to find viable test subjects for STEM. Theodore, who was employed by Mobius, would use his profound manipulation tactics to mold the minds of these recruits, getting them to cut off familial ties and leave no traces of their personal lives. A mess-free entry into Union for Mobius. Theodore was incredible at this job. His linguistic programming saw recruitment numbers soar, and Mobius had nearly enough storage harvested from the minds of these recruits to launch their wireless STEM plan. Theodore, though, he was a little unhinged. This was more than just a job to him. He enjoyed warping the minds of his followers and wanted more and more power, leading him, once planted inside the stem, to look for the core and draw its power for himself. Now, we don't know how he got into STEM, we'll find that out later, but already, Theodore's story is so much more interesting than whatever the fuck Stefano was doing for the past 8 hours. It seemed like, story-wise, the game was really picking up, and I was pretty excited to learn more about our new villain, but unfortunately, we're about to hit a wall on the story front. Sebastian wakes up to the sound of gunfire, with a woman we've never met before covering him from the monsters.
Look who finally woke up. About time.
Who the fuck are you? Although getting some answers would be nice, there's no time. Sebastian gears up and helps her defend this abandoned cabin we found ourselves in. This is a pretty tense section. The monsters have plenty of access ways into our cabin, so keeping them out of the windows is a bit of a struggle. We also see the return of the partner mechanic. We've got to keep this woman alive, or it's game over for the both of us. She's got her own health bar that we've got to keep track of, and we've got to help her out if she gets pinned by a monster, but with her assault rifle, she's usually more than capable of defending herself. She's also more than capable of pissing me off. I just don't think she was written very well. She's got this off-putting attitude, like she's trying too hard to be likable, and it rubbed me the wrong way.
Aim for the head! Takes less ammo!
I already don't like her.
Not so bad yourself.
Not so bad yourself. You got that. Damn. Come on. Here we go. Yep. There.
Not today, sucker!
Yeah, he kind of beat your ass, I won't lie. And with our Nocturne Toten situation handled, we can finally ask some questions. This woman introduces herself as Esmeralda Torres, and she already knows who Sebastian is. She's got a safe house nearby, so on the way we press her for answers about our situation. Now things are about to move really fast for the story, in a way that I honestly couldn't fucking believe, so let's just run down the list. Now first off, Esmeralda tells us that she knows Sebastian because she's part of a plan organized by Kidman to save Lily and end Mobius once and for all. Sebastian casually asks a few questions about this, as you'd expect after a bombshell like that, when Esmeralda clarifies that actually it wasn't Kidman's plan, but Myra's. Yeah, Myra recruited Kidman and Esmeralda on a plan to take down Mobius. She knew that Mobius had taken Lily and came up with a way to stop them from the inside. So she rose through the ranks, played ball with Mobius, and waited for the perfect moment to strike. Then, Esmeralda throws in that none other than Father Theodore himself was also a part of this plan to take down Mobius. This is insanity. You have to understand that the entire time, these huge, story-changing revelations are being thrown at us one after the other by a character we met 3 minutes ago during a casual stroll through the woods. No cutscenes, no dramatics, just a matter-of-fact, monotone reveal. This sucks. I mean, I can't say it enough. This short conversation has changed the whole narrative and our entire understanding of character relationships with nothing to show for it. To make matters even worse, Sebastian's only reaction to finding out that his missing wife, who he had been searching for years, is part of the organization that faked his daughter's death and sent in an operative to act as his friend, who now is a part of a plan to take down said organization to save their not-dead daughter, was, "This is ridiculous." Yeah, this is ridiculous, Sebastian. I couldn't fucking believe what was happening. I don't know if the budget ran out or if the writers just had an off day, but this was the worst writing we have ever seen from either game, beating out the "it's about feeling normal" line from Joseph. Even if Sebastian didn't react much to this world-shattering news, I sure did, so let's talk about it for a sec. So now we know Kidman's true intentions, why she stayed with Mobius after defecting in her DLC, and this major reveal helps us understand Myra's motives too. Myra formed this mutiny to save her daughter and prevent Mobius from taking over the world. This also sheds some light on why she left her files for Sebastian, begging him to continue her work. She likely did want or need Sebastian's help to enact her plan, but didn't want to risk his life by directly mentioning Mobius. Maybe if he had also stumbled into them like she had, he'd be recruited, and they could work together to take them down from the inside. Inadvertently, Sebastian did stumble into Mobius, maybe just not in the way Myra had expected. With Sebastian surviving the ordeal at Beacon and proving himself to be able to withstand its effects, it looks like Myra sent Kidman to purposefully gather him for their plan. As for what happened to Myra and Theodore when they entered the STEM, we're not sure. I mean, Theodore, we can venture to guess that he was a psycho long before he got his power in Union. It likely manipulated his way into Myra's plan, but for Myra, things are more complicated. We know that she had good intentions when entering the STEM, trying to save Lily and all, so why did she turn into that goo monster? I'm not sure yet, but I'd say we're gonna find out soon. As we approach Esmeralda's hideout, we're introduced to a new abomination, this thing. These flamethrower guys are a bitch to deal with, and as far as I could tell, they were invincible at this point in the story. They don't do anything necessarily special, aside from pissing me off, but because they're so tough, it's better just to sneak by them for now. With Esmeralda's help, we take care of the little guys blocking our path.
Son of a bitch!
You got that, girl. Oh, fuck. Come on, girl. You got it. Yup. Oh. Yeah. Try to dodge the left hooks. Okay. Let me step in and dip into her safe house. Esmeralda is gearing up for the plan down here. Tons of C4 at the ready. I guess taking down Mobius is gonna be a bit of a light show. As Sebastian chats with her a bit about his plan to take down Theodore, he says that maybe if Theodore is out of the picture, Myra might come back to her senses and leave with him and Lily. Not sure how those two things are related, but I'll play ball. We also learn a bit more about the plan from Esmeralda. Apparently, Myra was banking on those microchips that every Mobius agent has planted in their skull. Once Lily was safe, she planned to hijack the chip and cause, in Esmeralda's words, a mass remote-controlled lobotomy. I would assume there's been some forethought as to our team's chips. I don't think Myra's gonna pop the top on Kidman and the bunch. Speaking of, we take a minute to slyly update Kidman that we're keen to her plan without alerting any of the agents in the room with her, and then we're off, back to finding a way to Lily once again. It was a very short partner section with Esmeralda, though I can't say I'm upset with that. Apart from not liking her very much, there also doesn't seem to be a way to heal your partner in this game, so that would have been hell. Of course, before we worm our way back into the marrow, we rob Esmeralda blind, picking up our final bolt for the crossbow, the freeze bolt. We also skim through her diary, learning that Esmeralda agreed to and is willing to die for this plan because of something terrible she did in her past. Something she feels she needs to be redeemed for, though she doesn't elaborate on what this is. Anyways, we head back into the marrow, looking to contact O'Neill again, because I guess he's our go-to for all the hot tourist destinations in Union. Unfortunately, it looks like Theodore had the same plan, and left his mark on the marrow. You think he lights all these candles himself when he comes through here? Or do they just follow him wherever he wanders? Whatever the answer may be, it looks like Theodore is also making his way towards O'Neill, and I'm sure whatever comes out of that won't be pretty. We work our way back to Hoffman's safe house. if you remember our short visit with her, and learn through a residual memory that O'Neill told Hoffman to meet him at a restricted area of the Marrow. O'Neill leaving his safe house is not like him at all, so things must have gotten dire back in Union. Continuing our reunion tour, Sykes contacts us just after this, telling us he's had a breakthrough in his escape plan and we should meet up with him. Well, don't got anything better to do. We head back up to his slice of Union and help him out, but things have changed up here. While we've seen practically every area of Union at this point, our new fire enemies have been scattered across the map. Other than this, and maybe some cosmetic changes, we'll just be retracing our steps anytime we're inside Union for the rest of the story. This means we don't have to spend too much time talking about these places again. The only standout things I could find here were these gigantic fuckers we've never seen before. Kind of a weird way to introduce them to us, but whatever. They're big and slow, but if we get too close to them, they explode. And then of course we have the Doom guy. When we meet up with Sykes, he tells us he found a way out of STEM, but he needs our help again to turn on the power and clear a path for him to the terminal he needs access to. If we agree to help him out, he says he'll teach us to use the terminal too. That way we can use it to escape with Lily. So we head inside this back door to the Marrow Sykes created and start clearing a way towards this terminal. This is pretty simple, nothing we haven't done 1,000 times before. Once everything's dead and the power is flipped on, Sykes meets us down there and starts up his machine. As he sits down in what seems to be a makeshift STEM terminal, he wishes us well and disappears completely under a shroud of fog. In his haste to find a way out of Union, however, he missed an open document on a computer 6 feet away that details just how unlikely it is for this machine to actually work. Although he was transported somewhere, the document states that this method of exiting STEM only has a 25% success rate, with 1 out of 4 test subjects making it to the other side, while the other 3 were transported to an uncharted level of STEM with no known way to escape. Well, here's hoping for that 25%. Sykes left us with all of his earthly possessions, including a stronger shotgun variant, so I'll remember him fondly with each bullet I fire. Back to O'Neill, we push through more layers of the Marrow, eventually finding that restricted area. It's a laboratory where Mobius agents performed experiments on the creatures. We find the bodies of several monsters locked inside these chambers, so many that we have to wonder, when were these specimens collected? I guess let's take a look around the place and see what we can find out. We see a memory of Hoffman in here, and she passes through a door that we need a cerebral chip to enter, so I guess we'll be on the lookout for a spare chip as well. A few rooms over, we come across a document that explains a bit about this facility. The paper seems to imply that these monsters were collected right at the start of the collapse, when Mobius was able to capture citizens just before they transformed. All of the victims claim to have been chased by an invisible force just before transforming. A researcher notes that since STEM is an artificial construct, viruses and bacteria can't exist, so this isn't an infection, but rather a shared psychological breakdown. As a bonus, we finally get a name for the monsters in this document: the Lost. Another document explains that this phenomenon, the total transformation of Union citizen to the Lost, has occurred even before the collapse of Union. Although it was only present in 0.005% of the populace, some citizens of Union weren't fully susceptible to their memories being overwritten. They would start to remember their real lives, leaving them in a state of confusion that would ultimately lead to the mental collapse described in the previous document. Mobius could manually overwrite their memories again, but this was only a temporary solution, and certainly wouldn't solve the problem of citizens transforming en masse. Just past the lab, we find the pit. It's a massive, pit that Mobius dumped the bodies of test subjects into when they were finished with them. We can hear the screams of the lost echo from the bottom of this chasm. Some of them survived the fall somehow. We also have our final encounter with the poltergeist here, and the most exciting encounter at that. While the gameplay of this encounter remains largely the same, sneaking our way through a memory of Beacon while avoiding contact with the ghost, the implications this section has on Sebastian's personal story are major. During this encounter, we'll watch the ghost lift away the Beacon version of Sebastian, and our job is to catch up with him. Along the way, we come across the second half of a document we found all the way back at the start of the game. You remember when we had our first vision of Beacon, and Sebastian was being interviewed by a psychologist to decide whether he was fit to continue police work? That first document ended on a cliffhanger. We didn't know if Sebastian would be laid off or not. But here, we find out that the psychologist decided to allow Sebastian to continue working. Not because he was mentally fit, but because that doctor worked for Mobius and wanted to study the after effects of STEM. Mobius truly has their hooks in every aspect of this world. Even before the events of Beacon, Sebastian's life was being controlled by Mobius. In just the next room over, we find a letter from the chief of police in Sebastian's precinct writing to Mobius about Sebastian's work. They even admit that many of the officers employed at the KCPD are a part of the organization. Mobius was attempting to break down Sebastian psychologically after Beacon, trying to make him think that everything he experienced wasn't even real. And not like anyone would believe him anyway. Everywhere he's been, Sebastian's strings have been pulled by the entity that took his daughter, his wife, his well-being. I'd say there's no better time to take Mobius down. In the final room of this section, we find a past version of Sebastian lying on a table and muttering to himself. Visions of the events of Beacon are projected on the wall above him, and he's speaking about how he's trapped here. This represents a part of Sebastian's psyche that never recovered from Beacon. A small piece of Sebastian is still reliving all of that trauma, blaming himself for his daughter's death, his missing wife, even if he knows that none of that was his fault. Now, Sebastian is forced to confront these emotions head on, and he decides to take charge. Sebastian knows the truth, how Mobius manipulated every aspect of his life, and he refuses to be a victim once again. Sebastian raises his gun and kills the part of himself stuck in a cycle of torment. As soon as he does, we're transported back to the lab, and Sebastian admits that he feels a weight lifted from him. As he looks down at the gun he used to part ways with his former self, he sees his trusty old revolver, the same one he used throughout Beacon. This is a variant of the handgun we can use now, which is awesome, and I'm pretty sure it does a fuck ton of damage, so it was a welcome addition to my arsenal. We'll find that cerebral chip we needed in the head of a Mobius agent strapped to a surgical machine. A nearby note explains that the Lost phenomenon has spread to Mobius members, which inexplicably goes against the theory that this transformation only occurs in those who have had their memories overwritten. Can't say I feel too bad for them though. We go ahead and slip into this guy's brain and grab that chip, allowing us to catch up with Hoffman. We hear her begging someone to stop, and when we approach, we see her talking to one of those flamethrower guys. It moves to attack Sebastian, and when we roll out of the way, the creature reveals itself to be O'Neill.
Stay out of my way, Sebastian.
O'Neill, what happened?
Theodore showed me the way. I am his now.
Theodore got his hooks into O'Neill, convinced him of his teachings, and forced him to transform into this. We have to fight O'Neill here. No two ways about it. And with the help of the room's sprinkler system, we'll eventually extinguish his flame. It took a while, a lot of ammo, and he certainly wasn't a walk in the park, but we will deliver that final blow. With his final words, O'Neill thanks us for freeing him from Theodore's control, and tells us that he was forced to build a machine that conceals Theodore's location. If we destroy it, we should be able to find Theodore. Made you a lot taller, too. There's there's a benefit to it.
What happened?
Oh, shit! O'Neill dropped his inventory on death, so we go ahead and take that flamethrower off his hands. We'll need to find replacement parts for it, just like the sniper, so I'll be on the lookout for those. We'll come to find the machine O'Neill mentioned, looking remarkably similar to the stable field emitter. We don't have the firepower to destroy this thing ourselves, but we know who does. So we call up our old pal Esmeralda. She brings her disturbing amount of C4 with her and tells us to give her a signal when we're ready to blow. It's made abundantly clear that anything could happen once we destroy this thing, so we prepare ourselves and give Esmeralda the signal. Once it's destroyed, Esmeralda seems to vanish, and Father Theodore is alerted to our location. He berates us for trying to drag him out of his hideaway, and sucks Sebastian into a dark void, where he's forced to confront some of his biggest guilts and fears. More projections of Lily, accompanied by her blaming of Sebastian, cuts right through to Sebastian's core. By the end of this section, Sebastian has fully succumbed to Theodore's manipulation. In the deepest pit of Theodore's lair, a projection of Lily is conjured to torture Sebastian, only to be interrupted by Theodore, once again, extending his hand. He offers Sebastian all he's ever desired if he helps Theodore take Lily from Myra. But despite his inner turmoil, Sebastian still refuses and raises his gun to Theodore. As he pulls the trigger, Theodore disappears and the lair around us melts away, only to reveal that Sebastian's bullet struck Esmeralda.
You shot me. Sebastian, why?
No.
As we fade in and out of consciousness, we watch Esmeralda carry Sebastian back to a safe house, despite her just being shot. She defends Sebastian from the Lost and tells him that we need to resist Theodore's manipulation. Sebastian fades out one last time and wakes up in quite possibly the most important segment of the game, back home before the fire. And though it's clear that this is nothing more than a dream or a hallucination, the effects this will have on Sebastian's mental state are profound. As he explores his surroundings, we can see visions of Lily running happily around the family home, rooms left exactly the way Sebastian remembered them before the tragedy, and finally, Myra, giving Sebastian the words he's needed to hear since her disappearance.
You've endured so much. All this time, all alone.
Sebastian confides in this hallucination of Myra, and all of his regrets for not being able to protect his family. But Myra disassembles his worries and finally convinces him that there was nothing he could do to stop Mobius from interrupting his life. With this newfound confidence, Sebastian is mentally prepared to face Theodore again, free from his guilt that Theodore needs to manipulate him. When we wake up from this dream, Sebastian finds Hoffman sitting at the side of a deceased Esmeralda, telling him that she died in combat against the Lost. Sebastian yet again tries to blame himself for her death, but Hoffman quickly shakes him out of it, reinstilling his confidence against Theodore. Hoffman then shares that with the concealment machine destroyed, we now know where Theodore's lair is, and we can start making our way towards it. Before we leave, we take Esmeralda's assault rifle and share some parting words with Hoffman, where we learn about that irredeemable action Esmeralda was trying to make up for, the one she wrote about in her diary. Hoffman tells us that Esmeralda was the one that captured Lily from Sebastian's home and burned it to the ground. She had been trying to make amends for that night ever since. And although Sebastian is taken aback by this revelation, he remembers her sacrifice she made to protect him and quickly forgives her. We take a pit stop back in Sebastian's room, where our cat guides us to our upgrade chair. Then we're confronted by Tatiana, who tells us that despite being so close to the end of our personal journey, there's still one memory we've yet to explore, and leaves us with our final projector slide. Now, I haven't mentioned many of these slides, because most of them just rehash topics we've already discussed, but this one is very different. As soon as we pop this into the projector, we immediately see the subject of this slide. Well. Would you look who it is?
Joseph. My partner. My friend.
This is one of very few moments in this game that directly reference the first Evil Within. And, it's something, alright. Sebastian talks to Kidman about Joseph, going down his usual route of blaming himself for his death. As we remember, the last time Sebastian saw Joseph was when Kidman accidentally shot him. We know, however, Joseph was probably still alive, as we saw him being carried out of the stem by Mobius agents at the end of Kidman's DLC. Now, during this conversation, Kidman reveals that Joseph is in fact still alive, and when Sebastian tries to get answers on what happened to him, Kidman's only response is, "That's a long story, and we'll talk about it later." That's the end of Joseph's involvement with this game. This is just another point in a long string of questions that still remain unanswered in the sequel, and we're so close to the end of the game that at this point, I knew we weren't likely to ever receive those answers. It's very disappointing, I won't lie. The Evil Within left us with some very intriguing story bits that we will likely never see resolved, and that's a damn shame. Even if I had my problems with Joseph, I still would have liked to know what Mobius did with him. But I guess we'll never know. Back to our main mission, we head back out into Union and get a look at Theodore's stronghold. It looks like a lot of shit I don't want to deal with, so I take this time to repair that flamethrower real quick. Now at this point, we can actually kill the flamethrower guys, and we scavenge parts from their bodies, allowing us to use our flamethrower. It's a bit of an unfortunate time to unlock it though. I can't imagine the fire enemies are particularly fazed by flamethrowers, but I don't know, maybe fight fire with fire? Now, speaking of fire, there's a giant wall of it protecting Theodore's stronghold, so we call up Hoffman for some answers. She meets us nearby with a machine built from scraps of O'Neill's project. It's a portable stabilizer that should help us push through the wall of flames. Hoffman's the only one that can operate the machine, so she's got to join us on our firewalk. Now, the way this thing works is that it creates a shield around us, keeping us safe from the flames. That doesn't stop the firefucks from walking up to us though, so we've got to protect Hoffman and the device from being destroyed as we walk up to Theo's front door. It's a bit easier said than done, and the device breaks down a couple times on the way, and right as we're approaching the entrance of the stronghold, it completely fails. As the dome around us starts dissipating, we sprint to the entrance, but Hoffman trips and is grabbed by a creature. Sebastian tries his best to help her, but it's too late. Hoffman tells him to finish the job, and she's dragged into the flames. After losing every team member we were sent in to find, we finally made it to Theodore's stronghold, in hopes that taking him down will reveal Lily's location. It's a long way to the top, filled with monsters, traps, and more psychological tricks by Theodore. With Sebastian having overcome his guilt, however, Theodore's tricks are useless on him. We push through every challenge all the way up to the final encounter with Theodore. Theodore tries one last time to manipulate Sebastian with a projection of Lily, but Sebastian isn't buying it. His projection fails to shake Sebastian, so Theodore launches into probably the coolest boss fight of the entire game. Staying true to his theme, Theodore uses Sebastian's memories to attack him, sending him back to Beacon for a series of mini-boss fights from the past.
Yes, you remember it all.
Oh shit. Look who's back. This is awesome, man. I'm a sucker for callbacks, and it's really rewarding for those that played the first game and remembered each of these enemies' quirks. We start out by running from that old chainsaw guy through the first hall of Beacon, before Sebastian realizes what's up and turns the chainsaw back on him. Then we're captured by barbed wire and drugged back into Safehead's lair. He's still got his old respawning tricks, but we've got a few blasts from the past of our own, humbly reminding him of our firebolts. Now, I won't lie, he did pull one over on me. Oh my god, what the fuck? Oh my, whoa, whoa. Oh my god, I think I just shit myself. Okay, alright, that's fine. That's fine, you knew it was too easy for me, so you had to spice it up a little bit. That's okay. That is fine by me. But we take care of him soon after that. As the final clone of Safehead falls, our pal Laura crawls out from inside the safe, transporting us to her final chamber. With her weakness to fire, she's easily dealt with by our crossbow bolts and the fire traps around the room, and once she's dealt with, Father Theodore returns to his true form. We push towards him to take him down once and for all, but the moment is stolen from us. Theodore is impaled through the chest by none other than Myra. After throwing Theodore to the ground, Sebastian begs Myra to come with him and escape with Lily, but Theodore isn't quite done yet. He jumps up and stabs Myra in the neck, gloating about the core being his, but this doesn't faze Monster Myra. She turns around and gives him something to think about. Yeah, Myra's lost her mind. I don't think any amount of begging is going to stop her from protecting Lily, as she calls it. And she uses her goddamn goo power to thoroughly soak and destroy Theodore's stronghold. Who came up with this power? I mean, I don't get it. What does it represent? I don't know, let me know if you've got a theory on that. Anyway, Sebastian was left in the rubble, and upon exiting the room to try and catch up with Myra, we see that Union has been completely destroyed. All that remains is rubble and Myra's goo, but where there's goo, there's Myra. We can follow her snail trail throughout the remains of Union, even catching glimpses of her on the way. But still, Myra can't be reasoned with. She's too far gone. At one point, she even attacks Sebastian. And this does seem to awaken a part of her old self buried deep within her psyche. She tells Sebastian to leave while he still can, but without Lily, Sebastian ain't going nowhere. This does prove, although fleeting, a piece of Myra's true self remains in the monster she's become. Maybe there is a way we can snap her out of it after all. As we chase after Myra, we're forced to fight some baby batter beasts that she summons to slow us down. You know what, maybe this is a perfect time to try out the silenced handgun for the first time. Let's see how much damage it does. Okay, even having to fight this mini-boss along the way. It's got an interesting design. I'm fond of its telephone pole, and it did give me a run for my money. Now, I did get to use the assault rifle for the first time here, though, so who's really winning? My god. And after dealing with all her shit, we catch up to Myra. I was ready to give her a piece of my mind for sicking her monsters on me, but I guess Sebastian has priorities. Another round of begging for Myra to stop comes from Sebastian, but I guess third time wasn't the charm, cause she pops her ult and creates a giant sinkhole, pulling Sebastian into the infamous Union Tundra. In all seriousness, this place is pretty interesting. It's desolate, yet beautiful, and contains some really important story beats as we make our way to a clone of Sebastian's house we spot in the horizon. Through residual memories, we see how the plan to overthrow Mobius was formed, with Kidman, Myra, and Theodore joining together to talk shop. We then learn Myra's true goal at the end of this plan. She was going to replace Lily as the core, making Kidman promise that when this is all over, Sebastian and Lily would be safe. It seems like Myra was planning to sacrifice herself for the better good, but with Theodore's rebellion, things got complicated. And before we make our way into the house at the end of this desert, I take a quick stop at Sebastian's room to make a few final upgrades and say goodbye to Tatiana.
I'm afraid that this will be the last time I can help you. I feel the end approaching.
You've been here for me the whole time. Both times.
Maybe I've been with you longer than that.
What do you mean? Who are you?
I'm who I've always been. I'm who I'll always be. I'm who you turn to when you need inner strength. And you need me now more than ever.
And when this is all over?
When this is all over, you won't need me again.
Because this will be over? Or because I'll be dead?
The same answer applies either way. Now, let's get you ready.
Tatiana reveals that she's not actually a real person or a memory conjured by STEM. She's a part of Sebastian, specifically a symbol of his inner strength. Since we first met Nurse Tatiana, she's always provided Sebastian with upgrades to his abilities, this representing him finding the courage to push through whatever challenges he comes to face. This is a final goodbye, though, not just for this journey, but Tatiana specifically says that after this, Sebastian will never need her again. Perhaps, with everything he's been through, Sebastian is now free from the guilt and fear holding him back, and is allowing himself to reach his full potential for his wife and daughter. With our goodbyes said, we finally reach the climax of our story. At the top of this hill, Sebastian finds Myra standing outside of their home. Although she blinks between her monster form and old self, she is still overcome with the effects of STEM. She tries to explain to Sebastian that this house, a copy of their former lives, is Lily's new home. Inside STEM, inside this lie, Lily can be safe.
No, Myra. This isn't real. Pain is part of real life, and so is love. If she stays in here, she won't live a life free from fear. Because she won't be living a life at all.
You don't understand the things they did to her. I can protect her.
No, Please, let me take her out of here. Let's do it together.
With the threat of Lily being taken from her, Myra fully transforms into her monster. And although the last thing Sebastian wants is to hurt his beloved wife, he's forced to draw and fire his weapon at Myra. This is our final boss, a transformed version of Myra. The design is incredible, very grotesque, and knowing who she was before packs a weight into this battle. We don't have much of a choice here though. As Myra launches into an all-out attack, we're forced to start taking her down. By this point, I had unlocked an ability that let me enter bullet time mode, which was super helpful for hitting her weak points. And that's the main loop to this fight. She swings her arms around the arena, and as long as we dodge them and aim for the glowing weak points, we should be fine. After each successful phase, she spawns some loot bugs that help refill our ammo. Now, her weak points move across her entire body, and when they enter her shoulders, damaging them enough will result in her arm popping off and chasing us around the arena. This fight was pretty cool, and all in all, this is a serious upgrade from the on-rail shooter final boss of The Evil Within 1. This was so much more satisfying and tension-inducing than Ruvik's final fight, and I couldn't be more thankful for that. When the dust settles in the arena, after giving Myra everything we have, you'd expect this to be the end of her. Her lifeless corpse falls to the floor and melts into a lake of the white goo, but at the center of this pool, Myra's human form remains. Sebastian wades into the liquid and retrieves his wife's body. Against all odds, she's alive. The pull stem had on her is broken, and she's now back in control of her mind and body. She begs Sebastian to leave her behind and escape with Lily, but Sebastian refuses. So she claims that she'll follow behind and meet us there, but Lily needs him more right now. With that, we head back up, ready to escape with Lily. As Sebastian approaches the house, we cut back to the control room with Kidman and Mobius. The administrator is told that Sebastian is nearly ready to escape with the core, and prompts the Mobius medical team to get into place. You see, once Sebastian crosses that finish line with Lily, returning her back to the real world, Mobius plans to euthanize him as he lays defenseless in that tub. They can't afford loose ends, and Sebastian would stop at nothing to save Lily. This is when Kidman holds up her end of the plan. Once again, just like in her previous story, she defies the administrator, tells them that they can't kill Sebastian. As the administrator threatens Kidman and reminds her of her place, Kidman hits a button under her desk and draws a hidden pistol on all the Mobius agents in the room. We actually get to play as Kidman once again here in this action segment. Now, I know that we all know how I feel about action stuff in my horror games, but I think this is one of those rare instances where it actually works, and this segment is so short that it barely matters anyway. Besides, I think it's really cool how the game plays out from here. We're playing on both sides of the story. As Kidman shoots her way through the Mobius headquarters, we intermittently swap to Sebastian's point of view as he gets ready to leave STEM with his wife and daughter. It's a huge tonal shift with each swap, but I think it works pretty well for this sequence, letting us feel the emotional weight on Sebastian's shoulders, but also understanding the tension Mobius is exuding back in the real world. From Sebastian's point of view, we watch as he's finally reunited with his long-lost daughter. No mind tricks or hallucinations. This is the real deal. Sebastian carries Lily back down to the first floor and meets with Myra. He tries to convince her to come with them, but we're all aware of the plan. Myra has to stay behind and become the core of STEM. Once she's in place and Lily is safe, she'll sacrifice herself to not only destroy STEM, but activate her nuclear option, causing that mass failure in every Mobius cerebral chip. If Mobius is left clinging to life, Lily, Sebastian, and Myra herself will never be safe. We know just how deep their hooks are in society. There is no escaping them until they're all dead. Sebastian understands and reluctantly lets Myra go, sharing a few last words.
Never let her forget how much her mother loved her.
Myra, there's so much I want to say to you.
You don't have to say anything. I've been watching you all this time. I know how you've suffered, what they did to you, what I did to you. You didn't ask for any of this, and you've been into hell twice for it. It's time for you to leave now. To live the life that was taken from you.
I love you, Myra.
On the other hand, Kidman continues her warpath through the lab, leaving a trail of bodies in her wake. Unfortunately, none of those bodies belong to the administrator, who slipped away under the cover of suppressive fire. As Kidman enters the STEM chamber, she quickly double-taps the two doctors preparing to kill Sebastian and locks herself inside. As she works to extract Sebastian from the STEM, the administrator pops back up in the viewing room and speaks to Kidman over the intercom. Of course, more threats and insults follow, but these are meaningless to Kidman. She knows what's about to happen. Meanwhile, Sebastian runs towards his room, the extraction point, with his daughter in his hands. Union is completely collapsing at this point. They only have a matter of seconds before they're cast into the void, so Sebastian gets a move on. As he enters his room, awaiting Kidman's extraction, she turns to speak to the administrator, taunting him for his failure. Mobius agents are cutting through the steel door leading to Sebastian and Kidman. There isn't much time left, but Myra can't enact her plan without knowing Sebastian and Lily are safe. As we wait, the administrator smugly tries to pull out his control panel for Kidman's chip, attempting to end her life remotely. But Kidman smirks and reveals that, along with the other members of the plan, she's had her chip removed. This is when we watch Sebastian and Lily finally cross the finish line, successfully making it to the extraction point. Myra reaches out for her husband and daughter one last time, before executing the plan. With the go-ahead for Myra, Kidman hits a button on the terminal next to her, immediately killing all Mobius agents trying to break into the room. Then we pan to the administrator, crying out in agony as his brain is liquefied. With that, Sebastian is pulled out of the STEM and helps free Lily from the core. This marks the end of our second journey with Sebastian Castellanos. Sebastian, after freeing his daughter and really physically holding her for the first time in years, walks out of the Mobius headquarters with Kidman. In a post-credits sequence, we see Sebastian, Lily, and Kidman outside of a gas station, sharing a final happy moment with each other before saying goodbye. Sebastian loads Lily up in his car and drives off into the sunset. Lily waves goodbye to Kidman from the rear windshield, and Kidman watches contently. The agency that had once owned her life is dead. She was free to carve her own path and become whatever she wanted. As for Sebastian, he got his happy ending. Although it's without his wife Myra, she lives on in memory, as he and Lily set off for new lives, uninterrupted by evil corporations. As we watch our protagonist drive off into the horizon, we're met with one final scene. We return to the now abandoned Mobius headquarters. Dust and cobwebs line the walls. Clearly, the facility hasn't been touched since the rebellion. As we hover over the abandoned STEM system, though, a terminal mysteriously whirs to life, perhaps indicating that the virtual nightmare lives on. With that, we've concluded our last journey through the world of the Evil Within. Although the door was left ajar, there's been no news of a continuation of the series in almost 10 years, much to my disappointment. Through these retrospectives, I've come to really love these games, and I would be incredibly interested to see where another story in this world would take us. While Sebastian's arc has been completed, and honestly I think it's best to retire his character, we still have so many unanswered questions from both of these games that I would really like to see resolved one day. Joseph and Ruvik's whereabouts, whatever happened to Leslie, and even this mysterious final cutscene, all things we may never see again. I want to err on the side of hope that there will be an Evil Within 3 someday, but with the sale of the original studio and Microsoft retaining the rights to this IP, it's hard to tell if that'll ever happen. Or if it does, will it even be near the same quality as the first 2 entries? Regardless of whatever the future has in store, our job here today isn't quite finished yet. It's time we talk about what I feel the Evil Within 2 handled well, and what could have used a bit more work. Now, usually I would do kind of a pros versus cons list, but because this is our first direct sequel we've ever covered on this channel, believe it or not, I'm gonna switch things up this time around. I want to compare both Evil Within games to each other and find out which game I personally prefer and why. So, without further ado, let's talk about it. To start off, I think we've got to talk about the setting of these 2 games. While they both take place primarily inside the STEM, there's no doubt that there's a major difference in atmosphere between these 2 titles. The Evil Within 1 focused heavily on using the memories of those who had entered the STEM to shape its world, a concept that I was a huge fan of. This led to most sections feeling radically different from the last. There were so many different types of environments to explore, from the claustrophobic halls of Beacon to the classic evil manor of the Victoriano estate, and even the demolished Crimson City towards the end. Not only this, but most sections were painted with a thick coat of grit and gore that really sealed the tone the game was aiming for, a machine of torment. On the other hand, the Evil Within 2 took a very different direction with its level design. Because of the open world aspect, it probably wasn't possible to give each and every piece of Union the same level of attention that much of the first game's environments had, and I don't fault it for that. However, there was intent to move on from the deep horror aspects of the first game. We lose a lot of that grit in favor of a more ethereal feel to the world. And personally, I'm just a bigger fan of how the Evil Within 1 looks and feels. Next, we'll talk about probably the most important aspect of any game we cover here, the story. Now, it's no secret that I felt a lot of the most important story aspects fell flat with the second game. We spent half of the game with a villain that just didn't matter much in the grand scope of things. The whole section with Esmeralda was bewildering on its delivery, and in general, I just wasn't as invested in this story as I was with the first title. That's not to say that I think the Evil Within 1 had a groundbreaking narrative, because it didn't, but I felt a lot of the characters were more interesting than the crew we met throughout Union. Now, there's a huge exception to this, and that's our favorite detective, Sebastian. Sebastian's personal story in this sequel was leagues above the first game, because, there was barely anything about him in the Evil Within 1. Yeah, we had some journals to flesh him out a bit, but the whole time he was kind of a blank slate, with a stereotypical detective facade. I think the best moments in the Evil Within 2 came from Sebastian's story. The final scene between him and Myra was beautiful, and we learned so much about Sebastian and the way he thinks throughout this game. I think they gave him a fantastic send-off. So, while it's true that the overarching story didn't pique my interest as much as the first game did, Sebastian's character was so much more fleshed out, and made him feel like a real person by the end of our journey. Moving on to one of my favorite topics, the monster design. I'm not going to pull any punches here. I think the Evil Within 1 wins this by a landslide. There were some interesting monsters in this second game, but the variety and concepts of the creatures we faced in Sebastian's first journey were really great. I think the common enemies had way more variety and managed to stick in my mind significantly more than the second game, and there were a ton of bosses in the first, each with their own unique designs and gimmicks. Yeah, the buzzsaw lady was cool, and I was a big fan of those gas creatures we saw a couple times, but I don't know, I really loved the monsters in the first game. I don't think many of the creatures we faced this time around captured my attention the way our first experience did. I know it kind of sounds like I'm really pushing for the first Evil Within here, so let's give the sequel a couple of slam dunks. First off, the gameplay here was a crazy improvement over the first. Sebastian felt so sluggish and awkward at many points during the first game, which often left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth. I'm no stranger to weird controls or mechanics, but the first game just generally didn't feel the best. In the sequel, however, it was a blast to run through Union with Sebastian's upgraded movement and gunplay. And thank God, I can't imagine trying to play through an open world with those previous quirks. I think every complaint I had with the first game was remedied here, and that was really incredible to me. I mean, the guns were great, the stealth was great, I had very little problem with anything. To kind of go hand in hand with this, the open world was a ton of fun to explore with these upgraded mechanics. Pushing through Union was seamless, and I had a lot of fun deciding how to go about each group of enemies I encountered. And while I think the confined spaces of much of the first game lend to a better horror atmosphere, I have to admit that this open world kept me excited each time I opened the game. I love exploring the worlds of horror games thoroughly, and the second game setting allowed me to do that to my heart's content. Finally, a quick one for you. Just like I stated at the beginning of this story, I was just not a fan of the performances this time around, specifically with our main characters. Sebastian and Kidman, well, more so Sebastian, had their moments. Like I said, I really enjoyed the scenes between him and Myra, and his first introduction to Kidman wasn't too bad, but for the majority of the game, I just wasn't impressed. Honestly, I think even some of the side characters outshined our protagonists in some scenes, which probably shouldn't be the case. I don't know. I feel like the original cast did a pretty great job portraying their characters and the personalities, but maybe that's just me. So, all in all, everything considered, these games are really close in my mind. I don't think one takes a major lead over the other. But if I had to choose which game I personally prefer, I'd have to go with The Evil Within 1. I loved the setting, the designs of both the levels and the monsters, and I think the actors had more memorable performances throughout the story. That said, The Evil Within 2 is a fantastic game. This is not me saying I disliked this experience. There's a lot going for these two games, and I want to thank everyone who recommended me to cover them for the channel. But that's enough from me. I want to hear from you guys. How did you like The Evil Within 2? Did it answer any questions you had about this world, or are you still in the dark and hoping for a third just like me? And of course, which of the two games did you personally prefer? Let me know in the comments. I read each and every one, and I would love to know how you feel about this series. With that, it's time to move on and see what horrors await us in the next journey. Until we next meet, my name is Atlas, and I thank you all for watching. Hey everyone, Unscripted Atlas here. I just wanted to thank you again for watching. You know it means the world to me, and all of the comments you guys leave. Again, I read all of them. Even if I don't get the time to respond to each and every one, I do read them. So thank you all for the kind words and the criticism. I try to make these videos better with each one I make, and you guys are a really important part in that. Speaking of, this game was a very different experience, video making wise. We haven't done a game that's as open as The Evil Within 2 before, so I had a lot of trouble trying to figure out how I was going to portray the open world aspect, and I kind of just fell back on what I usually do and cut out the parts where I'm kind of just running around. I don't know, I worried that it kind of dampens the experience of the game, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to portray this game in its full like I do for all of the games I cover, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see if you guys like it or even notice it, or if I'm just sounding stupid talking about it now. I do hope you liked it though. I put a lot of effort into this one, and even if I'm nervous to put it out there and see what you guys think, I'm still excited to finally get this out there. I did want to talk about something important though, for those of you who stick around and listen to the very end. You know, this is not my first entry into the online world, this channel. I've done a lot of stuff over the past 10 years or so online to varying degrees of success, and This is something that I really, really enjoy doing. I'm very passionate about making these videos, and I want to make this last for as long as you guys will keep watching. That being said, you know, burnout happens, and sometimes I feel like I'm losing the motivation to work on these videos. It's just, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining about it because, again, I'm very passionate about it. I like doing it. It's just, I guess when you come to talk about the same thing every day, all day for like 3 months straight, it gets a little, you know, you start to feel it. So that's why for my next video, I have an idea to kind of shake things up. I don't know if I'm actually going to commit to it or not. It's just an idea. It's an idea I've had for a long time, but I haven't made any moves toward it yet. So I don't want to promise anything, and I don't want to give too much away, but for those of you that really enjoyed my Silent Hill videos, if this comes out, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with what I have in store. Now, if this video does come out and you guys don't like the kind of new approach I take to it, of course, we'll go back to the usual, and we'll probably go back to these kind of videos anyway, because I just really enjoy making them, but I just feel the need to try something out, try something new, and see what happens. Anyway, as per usual, I got a couple things to run through. First off, if you have any recommendations for games you would like me to cover in the future, please leave them in the comments. I'll probably have a pinned comment where you can leave them in the comments section, so leave one for me. I check them out. Both Evil Within games were recommended by you guys, so thank you very much for that. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with what I'm working on, you should join my Discord. No worries, you don't have to talk there if that's not your thing. It's just a great way to stay connected and up to date with what I'm working on. I give announcements for when videos are up or other things I'm doing, and I also put up frequent progress reports on the videos that I'm working on. If you'd like to see me play horror games live, you can check me out on Twitch, where I stream occasionally. I give announcements when I'm going live in the Discord, so those kind of go hand in hand. And if you want even more, you can't get enough of me. I've got a second channel where I've got an editor who takes these main videos and cuts them up to parts you may not have seen before, or just expanded bits, and I don't know, they're funny, they're good, and I know the second channel is kind of lacking right now, but we're working on it. Eventually, there's going to be a lot more stuff on there, so be prepared for that. I think that's everything I've got to say, so thank you again for watching, and a special thank you to those that watched to the last second of these videos. But, yeah, that's it.